President.
The Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, before I speak, I just want to take a moment to speak to the gut-wrenching shooting that occurred in Maine last night. This situation, I know, is still developing, and I'm sure there will be more to say about what the Lewiston community is going through and what steps we as a nation must take to prevent gun violence. But even as we get more information, it is painfully clear this was an horrific blow to a close-knit community. And I want my colleague from Maine and everyone in Maine to know that my heart goes out to them, everyone who's affected by this tragedy. And I think I speak for all of us when I say the Senate stands with both of our colleagues from Maine. Now to the task at hand, Mr. President. Last Congress, Senate and House Appropriations Committee leaders reinstated the practice of congressionally directed spending, or CDS, with bipartisan support. CDS is an important way for senators to advocate for their states and the communities they know best through their investments in projects to improve transportation and drinking water infrastructure, support workforce development programs, child care centers, so much more. So at the beginning of this year, the senator from Maine and I laid out a robust process to accept CDS requests for fiscal year 2024. And that process included extremely important guardrails, requiring each senator who requested a CDS to certify that neither they nor their family members have any immediate family members have any financial interest in the project, to ensure that each funded project is clearly identified in the reports with the requesting senator's name and posted on our committee website, required senators to publish their CDS requests on their own websites, established an audit process with the GAO, prohibited for-profit entities from receiving CDS funding, and established a total limit on the amount of funding that could be dedicated to CDS in our Senate bills. Across the three bills in this funding package, the committee received nearly 7,000 CDS requests from 66 senators on both sides of the aisle. Then our staff worked diligently to review all of those requests to make sure they met agency eligibility requirements and complied with Senate rules and the additional guidelines we'd set. Project met those requirements, eligible for funding. We respect the projects that senators choose to request and their decisions on CDS priorities for their states and their constituents. And through the CDS process, Congress is exercising our constitutional power of the purse. After all, we all know better than anyone about the needs of our states and our constituents. So I oppose this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to do so as well.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, before I address the amendment offered by Senator Braun, let me thank the senator from Washington State for her very kind comments expressing condolences to the people of Maine. Our hearts are so heavy today. This heinous attack, which has robbed the lives of at least 18 Mainers and injured so many more, is the worst mass shooting that we could ever imagine in our state. This is a dark day for our state. I am grateful for the expressions of support and offers of help and condolences that I've received from my colleagues and friends across the nation, as well as from the administration. I've had conversations both last night, throughout the night, and early this morning with President Biden, Secretary Mayorkas, Attorney General Merrick Garland, and Special Advisor to the President, Tom Perez, who has been particularly helpful in mobilizing resources for the state of Maine so that this killer can be captured. It's hard, Mr. President, to transition from the terrible attack in Maine to talk about the Braun Amendment, but that is what I must do. First, let me make a very important point. What we are talking about is whether the legislative branch of government should make decisions about government spending, or whether that decision-making should be given entirely to the executive branch when it comes to specific projects. We're not talking about adding more money. We're talking about who makes the decision. And indeed, in our Senate appropriations bills, less than 0.5% of the funding is allocated to congressionally directed spending projects. This process has provided opportunities for members of Congress from both parties who understand the needs of their constituents far better than every federal agency to advocate for specific investments in their local communities. And as Chair Murray has said, we've included safeguards to promote transparency and accountability. First, we prohibit for-profit entities from eligibility. Second, we require public disclosure to ensure that spending decisions are made in the light of day. For the appropriation measures before us today, each member's CDS requests have been posted online since April. There's no secrecy here. They also include a certification that neither the member of Congress nor members of their immediate family have any financial interest in the CDS items that they've requested. Further, the disclosure tables for each bill list each member who submitted a request for a particular project that was funded. These tables have been available online since this past summer when the bills were considered and approved in committee. The directed investments in these three bills that we are considering will make a difference to our constituents. They include funding to support agricultural research, local transportation and community development projects, as well as military construction projects that are on the service's unfunded priorities list. So I urge my colleagues to protect our constitutional power of the purse and support the Senate's ability to make substantive, tangible investments in our communities. I urge a no vote on Senator Braun's amendment.
Mr. President.
Senator from Indiana.
First of all, I echo the comments of Senator Collins and Murray on the tragedy in Maine. We see it all too often. When it comes to this place, we don't do budgets anymore. We haven't done them that we've adhered to in over 20 years. We've piled up, to give you a little pace of debt, we were $5 trillion in debt in 2000. We added another $6 trillion, I believe, or $5 trillion by 2008. Added another 8 from 8 to 16. Where's it going to end? Yes, congressional directed spending would be okay if it was in the context of actually doing budgets and not borrowing all this money from our kids and grandkids. This is symbolic mostly, but going back to earmarks just says we're putting a rubber stamp on the dysfunction that drives this place in the first place. I yield, and I ask for the yeas and nays.